Today I'm back with 10 more questions for your main character, and these are going to focus on the subject of family and family members, so stick around. What's up guys, my name is Brandon McNulty, I'm a writer and welcome to my writing channel. Today I have 10 more questions for your main character, and if you missed the previous videos in this series, basically all you need to do is come into these questions with the mentality of your main character. Get inside their head, inside their shoes, and answer these questions as you would from their perspective. I think that's the best way of doing these exercises. First question for today, how were you being the main character, how were you treated differently from your siblings growing up? And this is such a great question for building conflict, building tension between siblings, especially if you incorporate them into your story. So figure out how your character was treated either by parents or parental figures and how it differed from their brothers, their sisters. Whatever it was, it's something that could potentially cause a lot of conflict later on in life. I think one of the things to keep in mind with this is that your main character may have actually been treated better than the other siblings. And how does that make them feel? Do they feel guilt over this? Do they feel excessive pride? Are they arrogant because of it? Or if they were treated worse, maybe the parents were harder on them, they had higher expectations for them. What did that do to them over the course of their lives? How do they feel when they see their brothers or sisters around the holidays or whenever they bump into one another? Is there resentment? Is there anger? Are they over it? What is it? You got to figure that out. And I think if you do, dig into this sort of thing, you will find some interesting ideas for conflict throughout your story and for fleshing out your characters. Number two, in what ways did your parents fail you? And there's so many great possibilities for this question because parents are human beings, they make mistakes, they're flawed, and because of these flaws, the children, they feel it growing up. Maybe it can be something as severe as the parents never at all being there for the kids, or maybe the parents just failed to support your main character when it came to their most important goals. But figure out how those parents let down your main character. And I think it's a great question, especially if you want to have a sort of redemption arc in your story. Maybe your main character meets up with a parent after a few years apart or something like that, and there's obvious tension at the start, but later on over the course of the story they build toward healing or build toward understanding one another. Readers love these kind of redemptive arcs, so keep it in mind when it comes to family members. Now my number 3 and 4 questions are linked together in a way. They both deal with the subject of family values. And by family values, I can mean anything from a belief to a tradition and everything in between. Basically, something that a family cares about that really defines them as a whole. Something that if you grow up in this environment, this family environment, it's something that is constantly knocked into the kids' heads. Something like, stick up for others who need help, or something like being fiscally responsible, saving your money. Those can be family values that are something that they can either be something that a character abandons over time or that a character sticks with over time. And those are my number 3 and 4 questions. Which family values has your character abandoned over time? That's number 3. And which family values has your character stuck with over time? That's number 4. And think about those examples I just gave. If your character grew up in an environment where they were always focused on, saving money and, planning for the future and things like this, maybe the character abandoned that mindset over time. Maybe they became a huge gambler, or they just, decided to spend money like crazy, or maybe they just don't care about money at all. While at the same time, maybe they also grew up in an environment where they were told to help people who needed it, and they constantly do that in their daily lives. Maybe they've taken a job that enables them to do that on a daily basis. So find out which values your character has both abandoned and stuck with over time. The number 5 question is to ask yourself, what family secrets have been kept within the family? Because this is important, and it can also set up a potentially interesting plot twist later on in your story. If there's always been this one particular secret that never got out, and then it does at one of the later points in the story, that could make for some pretty exciting stuff. Also keep in mind my number 6 question, which is what family secrets were exposed to outsiders? And this is very important. And in addition to this question, also, what were the consequences of having those secrets exposed to outsiders? For instance, if you have a family of werewolves and they've been keeping their monster side a secret for all these years, and then maybe your main character confesses to a close friend about this, what happens to that close friend? Does the family come after them and kill them? Or maybe that close friend rats them out and people come after the werewolves and kill them. Anything like that can happen. Keep in mind that whenever there's a secret that comes out, there should be a cost, there should be a payoff, and there should be consequences for the characters involved. Number 7, what unresolved family issue are you afraid to confront? And this is a great question. I think in every family, you're going to have somebody who wants to call out somebody else, but they're afraid to for various reasons. For instance, say your main character, they look at their sister and they think to themselves like, oh man, she has such a bad drinking problem. I'm going to talk to her the next time I see her. But when the moment comes, they're unable to do it. Figure out why your main character is unable to do it. Maybe your main character just understands where the sister is coming from, why she developed that drinking problem. Maybe the main character pities her, or maybe the main character feels it would be hypocritical to call her out on the drinking problem. Maybe your main character has a gambling problem, or a drug problem, or some other addiction. So keep things like that in mind because they can add a lot of depth and nuance to your family relationships. Number 8, what member of the immediate family does your main character despise, or at least disagree heavily with? I think it's inevitable that if you grow up close to people, you're going to find something you hate about them over time. Whenever you have like a tight-knit family, yes, they're a family, but they're not clones of one another. They're going to have differences. They're going to disagree on things. And over time, those disagreements can cause a lot of strife between members of a family. So figure out who your main character despises in the immediate family. Maybe it's a parent, a spouse, a child, a sibling. Whoever it is your main character despises, figure out why they feel that way toward that other person. What's the source of it? What's the backstory there? These are great questions to delve into, and they can lead to a lot of great plot points depending on where your story goes. Number 9, what member of the extended family does your main character care about most? And this is a great question because in a lot of families there's this dynamic where you can't talk about certain things in the immediate family, and if you do want to talk about those things, you almost have to go outside the family and reach out to a cousin or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, somebody you can confide in. And I think it's important to figure out who your main character confided in growing up and who they still confide in nowadays. Oftentimes these extended family members can serve as a sounding board for your main character. They could just be somebody who the main character can go to for advice or to vent or to just process something that happened that they don't want to discuss with their immediate family. So keep these extended family members in mind and think about incorporating them in your stories for that purpose. Number 10 is a heavy question, but it's also an important one. Was your main character ever neglected or abused as a child? And you need to know this, especially if you're writing dark characters or at least characters with dark backstories. These kind of things are important. Abuse, neglect, those kind of things can shape a character and they can just turn their worlds upside down, and they could those issues can stick with them for the rest of their lives. So keep them in mind, and if you are writing characters like this, be aware that, things like abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, whatever it is, these kind of things can stick with a character forever. They can shape their daily habits. They can just, frustrate them when it comes to relationships. They have a huge impact on people, and if you want a great book on the subject, I'm actually reading one right now. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about PTSD, but the middle chapters deal a lot with, children being abused and how that plays out over the course of their lives. So if you are planning on writing about characters with darker backstories and you want to incorporate things like neglect and abuse and you want to portray it accurately, consider picking up a book like The Body Keeps the Score. I'll link it in the description below. At the very least, do some research on Google or YouTube. Look up things like PTSD, trauma, and so on. Figure out, how these things work, how they affect people over the course of their lives, and then try to present them accurately in your work. Your readers will really appreciate it. So I hope these questions helped. If you're interested in receiving a complete list of these questions as well as the ones in the previous videos, check out the link in the description below to my mailing list. If you sign up for it, you'll get a free PDF, complete list of all these questions. You can copy and paste them into a Word document and work on them from there. It's a great exercise for building your characters up. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos. Hit the like and subscribe buttons for me. Share this video with a friend. And as always, remember to keep on writing.